Hi viewers, I am Dr. Theresa Rosetti, Assistant Professor of History, Holy Cross College. Today we are going to see about the Indian Constitution, especially the framing of Indian Constitution. So this topic is actually the student will be able to understand the role of drafting committee and the Constituent Assembly for the framing of Indian Constitution. The student will be able to understand the political power of British in India and understanding the background of the administrative policies and working of the Constituent Assembly in India. So before we are going to see about these things, we can see about this video. In this way, we can understand the making of Indian Constitution.
We the people, having solemnly resolved to constitute India, battled the British for over a century on the streets and in the courts and assemblies to realize our collective desire for freedom from colonial authoritarian rule. This found an early voice in 1895 with the Swaraj Bill, which demanded a dominion state with equality for all and freedom of speech. In 1928, Motilal Nehru's report went further to call for self-governance and minority rights. However, both demands fell on deaf ears. So on 26 January 1930, the Indian National Congress declared Purna Swaraj, or complete independence, discarding the demand for dominion status. A year later, at its Karachi session in 1931, the INC demanded comprehensive social and economic rights. Sensing imminent change, M.N. Roy proposed a constitution drafted by a Constituent Assembly of Indians, by Indians and for Indians.
So in this way, the Constituent Assembly had its first sitting on 9th December 1946. Dr. Sachidananda, the oldest member of the House, was selected as the interim president. Dr. Rajendra Prasad was elected as a permanent president on 11th December. In this way, we can say that the drafting committee was started and under the chairmanship of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar on 29th August 1947. The drafting committee had 6 members. These 6 members of the drafting committee were Aladi Krishnaswamy Iyer, K.N. Munshi, N. Gopalaswamy Iyengar, Muhammad Sadatullah, B.L. Mitchell, and D.P. Kadlan. And the Constituent Assembly was set up especially to draw up Constitution of India. So as provided in the Cabinet Mission Plan, this was announced by the Cabinet Mission sent by the British government to India to negotiate the terms of the independence to India. So in this way they started November 1946. The strength of the Constituent Assembly was 389 and comprising 296 representatives from British India and 93 representatives from the Indian native states. Representatives from British India were elected in accordance with the Cabinet Mission Plan by the members elected to the legislative assemblies of the provinces. Representatives from the Indian native states dominated by the rulers of Indian native rulers. Finally, the Congress won 208 seats, the Muslim League 73 seats, and others the remaining 15 seats. After the partition of the country, on 15th August 1947, the membership of the Constituent Assembly got reduced from 389 to 308. Further, after the passing of Indian Independence Act 1947, the Constituent Assembly became an independent body. The Constituent Assembly represented all the members of the Indian people. The Christians were represented by John Mathai, Joseph de Sousa, Dr. H.C. Mukherjee, and others. The Anglo-Indians were represented by Frank Anthony and S.H. Prater. The Sikh community was represented by Hukum Singh and Ujail Singh. The Parsis were represented by Homi Modi and R.K. Sidhwa. And the Indian Muslims were represented by Muhammad Sadatullah, Jafar Imam, and others. So there were also women members in the Constituent Assembly. Mrs. G. Durgabai, Mrs. Suchita Kriplani, Mrs. Sarojini Naidu, and Mrs. Vijayalakshmi Pandit were some of the prominent women members in the Constituent Assembly. The Constituent Assembly had all the prominent political leaders as well as some of the leading lawyers and intellectuals of that time among its members. Some of the members were Jawaharlal Nehru, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, and Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. The Constituent Assembly assumed the status of the sovereign body after independence. It had a double role. First, it had to frame the Constitution of India. Secondly, it has to act as a provisional parliament. So before we are going to see about, we have to see Dr. Ambedkar's role in framing of Constitution of India. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar played a pivotal role in Constituent Assembly and in constitution making. His contributions to the Constituent Assembly and constituent making were he played an important role in the discussion of the Constituent Assembly. His scholarship and eloquence enabled him to speak authoritatively and forcefully on various constitutional issues in the Constituent Assembly. He gave satisfactory and convincing replies and clarifications to several questions posed by the members of the Constituent Assembly. He shows flexibility in accommodating the views of various parties and groups in the Constituent Assembly. He was the chairman of the drafting committee of the Indian Constitution. He did the task of preparing the draft of the Constitution of India successfully. He was generous to acknowledge the role of Congress Party, Constitutional Advisor B.N. Rao, and the members of the drafting committee in framing the Constitution of India. It may not be out of place here to state that several members of the Constituent Assembly and constitutional experts their contributes to Dr. Ambedkar for his outstanding role in the Constitution. According to Jawaharlal Nehru, no one looked greater trouble and care over the Constitution making than Ambedkar. Acknowledging his role in the Constitution making, his service to the nation as the first law minister of independent India, and his unforgettable role as a social revolutionary. So the VP Singh government conferred on him the highest civilian award, Bharat Ratna. So these are the parts of the Indian Constitution. Today I am going to give a very important parts only. So many parts are there in the Indian Constitution, but I am focusing the very important parts. Part 1, the Union and its territories. Part 2, the citizenship. Part 3, the fundamental rights. Part 4, the directive principles of state policy. Part 9, the panchayats. Part 15, the elections. Part 20, amendment of the Constitution. So these are the very important parts in India. You know about M.N. Roy was the pioneer for creating a separate constitution for Indians. In 1934, a commission was set up for the Indian Constitution under the recommendations of Cabinet Mission. There was an inter-government was established under Nehru in 1946. In August 29, 1947, B.R. Ambedkar appointed the chairman of the drafting committee. The drafting committee took 2 years, 11 months in 18 days to complete the process of the framing of Indian Constitution. At the beginning, there was 8 schedules, 22 parts and 395 articles. At present, 12 schedules, 25 parts, 465 articles are there in Indian Constitution.